And we have breaking news for you now. The United States has made a decision on the steel and aluminum exemption for Canada. I'm going to go now live to CTV's Michel Boyer. He is in Ottawa following this story. What more can you tell us, Michel?
Erin, good morning. The United States has decided not to extend Canada's exemption for steel and aluminum tariffs. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross just confirming that as of midnight tonight, Canada, Mexico, and the European Union will be facing 25% tariffs on steel, 10% on aluminum, and he is citing reasons as national security. You may remember a few weeks back, President Donald Trump decided to impose these tariffs on a number of countries, but gave an exemption to Canada and Mexico, as well as a number of other countries. But for us particularly, it was connected to NAFTA talks. Here's what Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross had to say.
You will recall that the reason for the deferral had been pending the outcome of the NAFTA talks. As have been released publicly, those talks are taking longer than we had hoped. There is no longer a very precise date when they may be concluded, and therefore they were added into the list of those who will bear tariffs.
So President Donald Trump moved forward with these tariffs under Section 232 of U.S. trade law. And what that means is effectively national security. But that has a lot of people here in Canada scratching their heads saying, how is Canada a national security threat to the United States? And we heard Wilbur Ross talk a little bit more about that, saying if you can't have a strong economy, you can't have strong national security. And initially, these tariffs were particularly directed at China, because what China has been doing in the past has been using what's being called transshipment. So effectively, putting steel and aluminum into the Canadian market with the hopes that it ends up in the U.S. market. So there were worries about anti-dumping. What we saw Canada do in response to that was increase capacity with Canada border guards so that they could effectively make sure that China and other countries weren't dumping steel and aluminum into our markets. But Erin, as we are learning now, that is not enough for the United States.
And we heard Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland speaking yesterday, basically calling this national security argument as specious. In fact, any idea how Canada might retaliate?
At this point, no. And I do want to highlight something that we heard Wilbur Ross say a number of times in that call. And he said that a lot of what will happen next depends on how these countries react to these U.S. tariffs. So Canada may have to tread very carefully as to how it wants to move forward with this, because if Canada decides to push too far, it could have negative consequences on future NAFTA talks. And as you heard there, it's not exactly clear when those talks are going to end. So there's still a lot on the line here.
Not to mention a G7 summit coming up in Canada next week. Going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out. Michel Boyer, thank you for this. We'll check back with you soon.
Thank you.